Part 2.
After my confrontation with Mark, the atmosphere at the wedding felt heavier. I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. What could he possibly be hiding that made him so defensive? My gut told me that it was more than just a mistake. Whatever it was, it had to be bad, dangerously bad. I decided to keep an eye on him throughout the night. Every conversation, every glance, everything seemed off. Then something happened that confirmed my suspicions. While I was walking through the garden area to catch some fresh air, I overheard a conversation between Mark and his best man. They were huddled together behind a tree, speaking in hushed tones, unaware that I was nearby. "You sure she doesn't know?" the best man whispered. "I told you," Mark snapped, his voice low but angry. "It's handled. No one knows anything. And if anyone finds out, I'll deal with it." The best man hesitated. "I don't know, man." She's starting to ask questions. Mark's voice dropped even lower, so low that I had to strain to hear. "I've got it under control. Don't worry about her anymore. After tonight, she won't be a problem." I froze. Who were they talking about? Was it me or someone else? My blood ran cold at the thought that Mark might actually do something dangerous. Determined to find out more, I slipped back into the reception hall, my heart pounding. I needed to figure out what Mark was planning. I couldn't just leave things as they were. Inside, the mood was light, and the guests were enjoying the party. But all I could focus on was Mark. He seemed to be keeping a close eye on one particular guest, a woman I didn't recognize. She was a little older, wearing a simple dress, nothing fancy like the rest of the crowd. I could see Mark subtly trying to avoid her, almost like he was hiding something from her. I felt a surge of curiosity. Who was she? And why was Mark acting so strange around her? Later that night, I saw my chance. The woman was standing alone by the bar, sipping her drink and looking out over the crowd. I approached her cautiously. "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "I don't think we've met. I'm Mark's stepsister." The woman smiled, but there was something sad in her eyes. "Nice to meet you. I'm a friend of Mark's." I could tell she was being evasive. "I've noticed you and Mark seem to know each other well." I pressed, hoping to get her to open up. Her smile faltered, and she glanced around nervously. "It's complicated. I really shouldn't talk about it." Now I was certain. She knew something important. "Please," I said, lowering my voice. "If there's something wrong, I need to know." "Mark's hiding something, isn't he?" The woman looked at me for a long moment, as if debating whether or not to trust me. Finally, she sighed. "Yes, he is. But I can't tell you here." "Then where?" I asked, desperate for answers. "Meet me outside in 10 minutes. Behind the fountain," she whispered before walking away, blending back into the crowd. I did as she asked, slipping out of the reception hall and waiting behind the fountain in the dark, my heart racing. The night was cold, and the quiet made every little sound seem magnified. After what felt like an eternity, the woman appeared. She looked around cautiously before speaking. "My name is Angela. I knew Mark before you did. Before he became part of your family." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. She took a deep breath. "Mark isn't who he says he is. A few years ago, he was involved in some serious trouble, financial fraud. He scammed several people, including me, out of thousands of dollars. He managed to get out of it without facing legal consequences, but there are people who know what he did. People who want justice." My mind reeled. Fraud? Scams? This was beyond anything I had expected. "Why hasn't anyone exposed him?" I asked. "He's careful. He makes sure to cover his tracks, and he intimidates anyone who tries to speak out." "He threatened me too," Angela said, her voice trembling. "I've been trying to find a way to bring him down, but he's always one step ahead." I stared at her, trying to process everything. This was bigger than just personal grudges or bullying. Mark was dangerous, and he had been living a double life right under our noses. I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to confront Mark one last time. But I needed help. I found my mom and stepdad at the reception, still mingling with guests, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Mom, I need to talk to you," I said urgently. pulling her aside. "What is it, honey? You look pale," she said, concerned. I hesitated, knowing how much this would hurt her. But I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. "Mark's hiding something. He's involved in some kind of financial scam." Angela told me everything. Her face went white. What are you talking about?" I quickly explained everything Angela had told me, watching as my mom's expression shifted from confusion to horror. "Are you sure?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes," I said firmly. "And we need to stop him before he hurts anyone else." Together, my mom and I approached Mark, who was laughing with his friends near the dance floor. When he saw us coming, his smile faltered. "What's going on?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "You've been lying to us, Mark," my mom said, her voice shaking with anger. "We know everything." Mark's eyes widened, but he quickly composed himself. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying," I shouted. "Angela told us the truth. You've been scamming people for years, and now you're trying to cover it up." For a moment, there was silence. Then, Mark's face twisted into a sneer. "You think you can ruin me? You've got nothing. No proof, no evidence. Just the word of a bitter woman." But I didn't back down. "Maybe we don't have proof yet, but we will. And when we do, you'll pay for everything you've done." Mark's expression darkened, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. He knew the walls were closing in. Before he could respond, my mom turned and walked away, tears streaming down her face. I followed her, leaving Mark standing alone in the middle of the celebration that was now falling apart. The wedding was over. People left in a hurry, sensing that something was very wrong. In the weeks that followed, my mom and I worked with Angela to gather evidence against Mark. It wasn't easy, but eventually, the truth came out. Mark's scams were exposed, and he faced the consequences of his actions. It was a painful process, especially for my mom, who had trusted him so completely. But in the end, we were free from his lies. And as for me, I finally found peace knowing that I had stood up to the bully who had haunted me for so long. The wedding may have started as a nightmare, but it ended with the truth, and that was something worth fighting for.